Okay, so now we're going to talk about reference types and retain cycles, debugging using leaks tool. So but let's talk about our data types, right? So we have two types of objects that we're going to be dealing with. One is by value and by reference. So classes are by reference. Structs are value types. And what that means is a reference type or a class always points. It points to I guess an address in memory, and it's usually OXO or something to that effect. OXO and some other letters, right? So, say you create an instance of a particular class. We'll call this class person or car. We'll call this class car. Every instance, you create an instance of car, it kind of it points to one value, right? So you set the value, you create another class, and you set its value based on the new class. But both of those classes point to the same location in memory. And of course, I have a tutorial that talks about ByValue and ByRef structs and classes. So this is kind of recovering some of that. But let's go over this and let's look at some more differences, right? So examples of ByValue are structs, enums, things like string, bool, dictionary. These are all by value. That means they're copies, right? They're separate copies. Each one has its own individual space in memory, right? Whereas a class is by reference. That means all of these are pointing to the exact object, the exact same space in memory. Different spaces in memory, same space in memory. Okay. So why use a class? Sometimes in a class, you may need to have a function that manipulates a class property. A public function that manipulates a class property. In a class, you can do that. In a struct, you can do that, but you'd have to make the designate the property as mutating. That's a whole nother argument. I think I've already covered this in my classes and structs tutorials. But another thing, structs are necessary when you intend to implement protocols, delegates, and delegate protocol-oriented programming as opposed to object-oriented programming. I'm going to append which uses inheritance and polymorphism. Inheritance and polymorphism are done with classes by reference, not with structs by value. They're incapable of participating in polymorphism. They participate in protocol-oriented programming that looks to create a code base that doesn't, without repeating coding, because the advantage of object-oriented or polymorphism is you aren't repeating code, right? Well, same thing with protocol-oriented programming, it's a different pattern, okay? There's also structs are lighter than classes, right? Fewer memory issues, but not to be honest, let me go back. I'm sorry. Oh crap. Okay, sorry about that. Remember, structs can have retain cycles if one of the class properties are of type class. So yeah, you can have memory issues in a struct, but they aren't as structs aren't as prone to memory issues as classes are. Another thing, classes are necessary when you need to test using an identity operator, which means this doesn't just test if the values of both classes or class instances are identical. It tests this operator, the identity operator, tests if two instances of a particular class are pointing to the same space in memory, because they may not. Okay. Classes are necessary when you need Objective-C interoperability. Yes, there's a lot of functionality here that requires Objective-C interoperability, third-party frameworks, stuff like that. Just keep this as a side note, because this right now is beyond the scope of what we're about to do. So I just kind of laid down the groundwork. Then I'm going to come back with some examples. So on to the next.